Hi, folks. Welcome to Friday's edition of the iWrite Radio podcast stroke videocast. I've got Stuart Lockhead, Jimmy Hutton, and myself, Norrie Stewart, today. We're going to talk about the Tories being upset that the BBC has an SNP bias. We're also going to talk about Culloden and the messaging that's obviously a few hundred years old now that didn't quite work, i.e. that the Jacobites were independistas. And Stuart wants to tell us how much he loves Ben Fogle at some point. The Jackson Carlaw claim, which you can see behind me, that's actually from the National, but I think the Scotsman and the Herald both ran with paragraphs. So Jackson Carlaw has reported the BBC to Ofcom for biased reporting in favour of the SNP. Jimmy, I believe you don't hold the same view.
No, strangely enough, I don't agree with the painting napper in charge of the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party. The BBC, by its very name, is a unionist organisation. And for him to claim that somehow they are showing a bias to the SNP is laughable. It's risible. He makes an utter fool of himself the minute he opens his mouth and says these words. I've really not got a great deal to say about it, because I think anyone who has ever watched Reporting Scotland at 6:30 would know that the BBC is biased, but they certainly would never ever think it's biased in favour of the SNP.
Stuart?
It's written into their constitution. The BBC have to defend the nation state. Well, that's summing it up, but it's actually written into their constitution, charter. Their charter. That's the nice one there, Jimmy. It's written into their charter. They have to defend the United Kingdom. So the idea that the Tories can turn around and accuse them of being biased is farcical.
I'm trying to think of the actual words. Is it not something like support and nurture the continuation of?
Aye, and that was
United Kingdom.
That was inserted into their charter, wasn't it? It wasn't always in the BBC charter, but the last time the charter was up for, I don't know what they call it, but it wasn't up for bidding because nobody else was going to bid for it. The last time the charter was renewed, that particular clause was chucked in there.
I think the best way to put that would be the last time the Tories had the ability to put into an agreement control of the BBC residing with the Tory party.
Oh, absolutely.
That's about accurate as how I put it, mate. Aye.
Ever since the fallout of the Iraq war debacle, and then the Tories getting back into power, the Tories replaced everybody of any importance with yes men, Tory members, Tory politicians, Tory businessmen. It's completely run to them. I've got a lovely quote here, according to, and forget what paper. Oh, it'll be the National. Jackson Carlaw claimed the report should have mentioned the FM was responding to his questioning. A source close to Carlaw said, "It's not something we would do lightly, but enough is enough. We know the SNP do this, and it's time for us to go to war with them as well." War?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what they specifically come up with, because I can't remember the last time I saw an SNP commentator on the British BBC.
No, it doesn't come for them. It comes for the Yes movement, the wider Yes movement that would criticise the BBC.
No, but what I mean is, if Carlaw's upset that he doesn't get a name mention, surely Sturgeon can be equally upset about the lack of mention she gets when the BBC are going national. You know, BBC England. You know, you don't see in Blackford or anything. It's all the government, all government spokesmen or scientists. Sir Keir Starmer has had a couple of mentions over the last couple of days.
Has he?
Yeah, aye. He has.
Norrie, I think we'll find. Well, we'll probably not hear much about this, but I think you'll find that Jackson Carlo's got a begging letter going out this weekend. That's why he's made this nonsense up. He'll be out looking for funds for next year's election, and that's what this whole thing's about.
Well, I've got a wee clip here from this morning from the Radio 4 Today programme. Nicola Sturgeon being interviewed by Sarah Smith, the late leader of the Labour Party's daughter. So if you give me a second, I'll play it for you. This is it.
As you say, unprecedented times when the SNP First Minister of Scotland says she's doing her best to try and work together and in tandem with the Tory government in Westminster.
This political, Sarah, but this is not political for me right now. I'm trying my best as First Minister of Scotland to deal with a pandemic and reduce the number of people who are dying. So I've never been, I'm a politician, but I've never been less interested in just reducing something to party politics. So you can have a go, but I'm not going to bite.
Nicola Sturgeon, thank you very much for talking to us this morning.
All very friendly. We joke at the end there. She all but said, "Do you now support Better Together?" I mean, totally political. Totally political.
I do wish people would have a close look at Sarah Smith. She's one of the most right-wing creatures to come out of Morningside in my lifetime. And there's a lot of right-wing creatures come out of Morningside.
She's definitely like the SNP, and she finds it really difficult not to make it obvious with her facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
I thought
she always looks like she's just licked her own ass or something. Eh? She's always got that nippy sweetie coupon.
Do you know what would be really interesting would be to discover the son or daughter of a famous politician that doesn't follow their parents' politics slavishly.
Hugo Rifkin.
And I suppose, okay. Malky's not the worst guy in the world. He was quite good for a Tory politician.
Well, he was a disaster at the time, mate. But I suppose when you look back now, at least he actually cared about the members of the community that weren't Tory supporters, which just doesn't happen now. They say that they do, but they really don't. They're only interested in their own support. That's why Jackson Carlo only appeals to the extreme right, like the boys who are banging their lambeg and playing their flutes all July. That's who his appeal is to these days.
Well, I tell you, I'd like to see more of Jackson Carlo on the telly if they started asking him some pertinent questions, like, for instance, why did you change your stand on Brexit?
No, that's not the only one. He's
on
everything. He's as two-faced as they come.
He's got faces in the cloak at the foot of the walk.
Unbelievable. Right, moving on from that, God, I can't remember his name, the Tory MP that's moaning about the video about Culloden.
Dean Lockhart.
That's the man. Who claims that his version of history is correct. That's the version where the Jacobites weren't fighting for an independent Scotland.
No, they didn't have such things like independence for Scotland and no union engraved into their swords. That was done later, clearly, by us divisive nationalists who just wanted to stir things up a wee bit. They didn't shout no union as they charged. Perisher thought that could actually be true.
What did he actually think a Jacobite was? A working class Tory?
Look, I mean, he had some basis for his argument, because there were Jacobites in England as well. But the truth is, by the time they got down into England with that army, there were no Jacobites stood up. So the only Jacobites that stood up said they'd stand up for the alternative king were in Scotland.
English Jacobites were primarily Roman Catholic who wanted to put a Catholic back on the throne and make the United Kingdom subservient to Rome again. Well, that's how it's been portrayed up here, and that did not apply to Scotland. The Jacobites wanted to put the rightful king back on the throne again. They didn't agree with the English replacing a Stuart with a German who was more malleable to the Church of England.
Well, they'd done it twice, if you recall, that England decided they would replace the king of all three kingdoms. At the time, we had three kingdoms: Ireland, Scotland, and England. And then they had, of course, they did away with it. Was it the Irish Parliament? And then, of course, they did away with the Scottish one by devious means. It's worth saying that.
Whoa. Devious means. They did away with the Scottish Parliament the way they've always done it. They stuck some money in rich people's pockets.
And then threatened the rest.
Aye, essentially. Beat the shit out of the proletariat and paid off the rich guys.
Okay, but what is worth saying is before Bonnie Prince Charlie and his Jacobite army left Edinburgh to head off down to England, they had a meeting. They battered the fuck out of Johnny Cope at Preston Pans, frightened the life out of them there, and then they had a meeting and decided whether they would stay in Edinburgh and consolidate themselves in Scotland. The vote was to go to south of the border by only one vote, however many were at the meeting. And of course, Charlie wanted to claim the throne in England. The rest of them, to be honest, wanted to stay in Scotland. Now, what does that say to you?
Well, it just says that the English aristocracy and the Scottish aristocracy are basically the same thing.
Aye.
They just want mayor.
But basically in Scotland, that Scottish army wanted to stay in Scotland. So
imagine us though having the cheek to want to interpret our own history slightly differently from what how London tells us to interpret it. And even worse, imagine BBC Scotland funding a programme that actually held that our history is different.
I wonder if this is really why Jackson Carlo's reporting them to Ofcom, because of a video about Culloden.
Well, it's not even a video, as far as I know, that BBC have shown. I think it's one of these BBC The Social things that go online.
Right, but the
I
best
think you're right.
The best bit of this stooshy is that somebody, Gollum crawled out from under a stone. David Coburn appeared. Remember him?
Aye. He makes Jackson Carlo look interesting and intelligent.
I mean, he makes like Gollum look like a dried up old twig instead of a slimy whatever it is. David Coburn was also angered by the video, saying it was fantasy and denying that the Jacobites supported independence.
How on earth can Walter Mitty describe anything as fantasy with a straight face? You've got to wonder.
Well, I mean, okay, there was a religious element to the Jacobites, but
yeah, far more down south than up here.
Aye.
What does he think they supported?
It doesn't matter what he
thinks. Pork pies on a Sunday.
Aye, probably, mate. Probably. Yorkshire roast. We didn't want to eat haggis back then. We didn't want to drink whiskey. We wanted to drink bitter and have Yorkshire puddings for our lunch.
Unbelievable.
Well, here's a good quote from that video, by the way. The video for the BBC, The Social, says, "The union caused economic catastrophes and people signed up in their thousands when Bonnie Prince Charlie said he would make Scotland independent." That's a quote from the video, apparently.
Well, fairly accurate.
I was interested with the point where the boy actually said that, regardless of, I mean, he put down quite harshly, I suppose, the politician's viewpoint. He did say that history, as was written, has been reinterpreted by academia. It's just that the politicians didn't understand the academic take on the history these days. I quite like that one.
It's worth saying that when it comes to history of these islands, it was all seriously revised in the mid 19th century, 1850s, by a guy called Macaulay. Now I don't know I do know the details, but I'm not going to bore you with them here.
Good, solid unionist guy. And
a Whig as well. Totally reinterpreted the entire history of the British Empire up to that date. And by saying that, yes, it was a destiny. It was bound to happen because we were so clever.
Right. Absolute horses.
And all of previous history was rewritten from then on.
Well,
it's worth noting, guys, that Kenny McCaskill, who I'm not Kenny's biggest fan, as you know, but he's got a book out, I think, now about radical Scotland. And it's well worth a butcher's hook. I've seen a couple of reviews on it, and it looks like that'll be my treat to myself for the weekend.
Well, quite right. I saw it reviewed. It's actually, it was reviewed on the Parliament channel. That's the Westminster Parliament channel. It's only about a 15-minute interview, but if you can find it on the BBC iPlayer, very worthwhile.
BBC iPlayer. Aye, no advertising of the BBC on this programme, mate.
Oh no, they're pro SNP now.
I'll see if I can steal it and put it up.
You can stick it. There is one lovely quote from the guy who actually made this video about Culloden, and I've got to read it out. Culloden isn't some fusty old tale of monarchs squabbling over a throne. It's a tale that encompasses the whole of Scotland and is still part of their living culture today. Glad to write a wee bit of memorial at the BBC in Scots.
Oh, nice.
I know exactly who this is. The historian guy that speaks Scots when he's on the telly, isn't it?
Aye, he's quite an entertaining boy.
Aye.
I've always found Scots a bit. I mean, I grew up with the Dorics, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm a native speaker. But it's always been pronounced. It's a different language if you go to Ayrshire and doing the borders. The problem I've always had with it is seeing it written down, because apart from Burns, I never saw it written down. My Scots is all oral.
Each town in the borders has a different language.
I think I'd agree with you, Stuart. I think the first time I seen these things, the Scots written down, was the likes of James Kelman and Irvin Welsh, and that was, what, 80s, 90s?
Aye. Now, the trouble with reading Irvin Welsh's book, I had to read it out loud to myself to understand, because the spelling didn't always make sense. I just kept reading it out fast. All right, that's what it means.
You didn't mean all right, you mean aye right.
Aye right, okay. Aye,
well
right.
done.
Well done.
Jimmy.
Well, I'll get one in.
I feel a Stuart McHardy invite coming on.
Oh, aye, that's a good one.
Stuart will give us a good breakdown of Culloden. Stuart's a historian. He's written quite a few books. And
that's a good idea.
The Radical Scotland element, that's right up Stuart Street, because he does that historical walk round the Calton Cemetery, pointing out all the
he does.
socialists that got sent to Australia and stuff from Scottish recent-ish history. Talking about socialists and radical ideas, what about Ben Fogel? What are you laughing at? I'm sorry. Do you know what gave the Queen the clap? No?
Worse than that, he wants us to sing Happy Birthday to her. I mean, what did we do? Did we sing it in Greek? Did we sing it in German?
Apparently he doesn't want that. It was his daughter. His daughter wanted everybody to sing the Queen Happy Birthday.
He's just sticked a crap idea on his daughter because she's too old. She's too young to get interviewed by the news. That's what he's doing there.
Wasn't that a doubling down that made it even worse? I mean, he never mentioned his daughter when he first raised the idea. And then when he got hammered by everybody on social media, he brought his daughter into it. Which
blames a bairn. Aye,
that was an awful thing to do.
Fogel is a shithouse. That should be the campaign for the weekend. Fogel is a bogle.
Fogel is a bogle. That works. But he moved on to something else, didn't he? Once he realised the Queen wasn't getting her birthday tune. What was it? The other thing he wanted everybody to sing in favour of.
Oh, I've not heard that one.
He's moved onward and upward.
Oh dear. I'll tell you what, fair play to him. He's making his pal Dan Snow look like a normal, eh?
That is true. Maybe that's the ploy. I was watching one of these animal programs, one of these zoos in England. And they have a program on almost every night, I think. My wife watches it. And who was there? Bonnie Ben the Bogle.
Oh, no.
Standing behind the intelligent, articulate woman who fronts it. He was hiding in the background. I have no idea what he was doing. I don't know, because he didn't seem to contribute at all.
You can tell these faces that appear a lot in the BBC are obviously favourites by the high Hegians at the top.
Well, maybe he was just a bit of beefcake for the ladies. I don't know.
Do you want a quote from it? Do you want a quote about this? One of the people, a reaction. Someone suggested, at 9 o'clock on the 21st of April, we're all calling the whole country to laugh from their windows and doorsteps at what a ridiculous idea this is. A nurse commented, I'll be working. I'll be well into a 12.5-hour shift as a staff nurse. And you won't hear men through the PPE. Don't know why, maybe it's a misprint. It's been sorted, Ben. Matt Hancock is giving her a badge.
See, somebody mocked up a thing on Twitter that if you wear the badge, you don't pay tax. If you're a care
Right.
worker and you wear the badge, you don't wear tax for a year.
So
I'm
I'd like to
reading it.
see a badge with a royal warrant round it.
Well, I've read it and realised it's for the Telegraph and thought, not even. And then I thought, these Tories might just be stupid enough to try and pull something like that. But it was actually fake news. But it was quite scary because I was thinking that, Rab and his crew might just try and pull something like that.
Well, they're in deep stuff at the moment. I know that Nicholas Presser, ITN, tried to hijack her with a study of 1,000 care workers in Scotland, but she fended it off pretty well. But the one that they've done down south hits home at Matt Hancock in particular, saying yesterday that 15% of care homes in England were infected with the virus, because they've got a huge survey where it's 42% of care homes in England, which is a number, Norrie, far closer to what we were discussing previously.
It's nearer the European number and the Scottish number. But he was asked about the 3%. Now, was it in front of the select committee? I can't remember. But he was asked about
he was
the
at committee meeting
3%.
this morning as well,
And it was, is this an accurate figure? And he'd give him its due. He said no. So, I mean, they obviously know whether they've got the actual numbers, whether they have a system set up to collate the numbers, maybe that's their get out. But they seem to be accepting it's going to be a lot worse than it looks like.
I watched him at that committee, Norrie, and I've got to tell you, mate, I'd love to play a game of cards with Dominic Raab. You can almost hear his brain ticking over. And when he narrows his eyes, he's got nothing to say, so he just blusters. I'd love to have a game of poker with a clown like that.
I'm not a poker man, I have to say. I would quite like to punch him in the face, but that's entirely different.
That's not a bad answer.
I have to say I was quite impressed with Jeremy Hunt.
Yeah, well, Jeremy's
watched it briefly.
He's getting his revenge in for Boris. Shafted him, mate.
Aye, but he did it quite subtly, though. He did it smiling assassin style.
Oh, absolutely, mate. He knows he's good enough at his job to just give somebody like Matt Hancock rope and no finding well that he's going to wrap it around his neck at some point.
Well, what I found was screaming and shouting at the screen, "It's all your fault, Hunt. This is your fault. You did all the cuts. You're the bastard here." Doesn't he help? Doesn't he help?
I missed this. I'll have to look for the recording.
Well, they've started doing virtual committees now.
I've seen one or two.
At Westminster. So we need to keep our eye open.
So Hunt's the chair of the health committee or something?
He's the chair of the health committee, Stuart. He was fair enjoying himself this morning. And as I say, he was just handing Matt Hancock rope and knowing fine well that Matt Hancock was going to make a noose of it and tie it around his own neck at some point.
Well, the thing about Hunt is he knows where the bodies are buried because he buried them.
Because he buried them, aye.
So that could get quite interesting. The other interesting thing about this committee system is what's the name of the committee that decides on parliamentary procedure? That's not constituted yet, right?
Yeah,
they haven't got a chairman yet.
That's the Ways and Means Committee or something. That's no Ways and Means, that's American. But it's something like that, aye. But you're right, that's deliberate, mate, because the minute they constitute that, they've got to constitute the Security Committee and then release the report.
Exactly. And they can't constitute it because Parliament's not sitting. So they're trying what they're trying to do is change the rules so they can nominate a chairman instead of Parliament voting on a chairman.
Yeah, they've got a chairman, mate. It's
Jenkins.
Bernard Jenkins, aye.
Aye.
Oh my
But
God.
what I'm saying is keep your eye open, because if they get away with it, they'll try doing it for other committees in the future.
Oh, aye. They're this wee break, this parliamentary sojourn while Parliament's no sitting, has suited them immensely, mate. So they will try to find ways to keep parliamentary scrutiny to an absolute minimum.
Aye. So has anybody else stumbled across anything interesting?
Well, apart from an article in the Herald, there was a writer in the Herald she was trying to come, the Herald, of course, she was trying to say, "Oh, isn't it wonderful that nobody's talking about the Constitution?" And she tried to be even-handed with her description. I mean, she wrote 1,000 words or something, but what she ended up with, her very last thing was, "We would all benefit after normal life resumes if the constitutional navel-gazing didn't resume with it."
That's their only route now, is to shut the debate down.
Well, it must be terrible to support a party that's got 22% support in the country and look at a party that's sitting at 53% in the polls now. You've got to find a way to shut them up, because otherwise they'll keep winning elections and keep doing things that you don't like having referenda.
Well, Ian, what's his name? The sole MP in Scotland, Labour MP, Ian Murray was interviewed last week and basically said the only way we're going to stop this is by not having a referendum. So I'm, nothing about democracy, nothing about if the Scottish people want a vote, they should have a vote. Nothing like that. No, they're just not getting a referendum. So we'll be able to continually claim that the referendum, which is now 6 years ago, remember? So one more year and we're into a parliamentary generation.
That's true.
So, can we start possibly thinking about not using that slogan anymore?
Well, it's just the arrogance, as I say, of minority parties in Scotland, which is what they are. I mean, particularly Labour. God, they're not that far off single figures, they're that bad. And minority parties in Scotland feel that they can dictate to the party of government. Because that's what the SNP are and have been now for 13 years. The party of government. Any party normally that was 13 years into a government, they'd be looking at getting their asses kicked all the way down to 10, 15% where Labour are sitting, because normally when you're in government for that length of time, you get a beating. There's just too much. There's been too much of a build-up over the years of mistakes and what have you. And well, mind the Tories with John Major, it was sleaze and everything, wasn't it?
Can you foresee, on a bigger scale, a situation where Northern Ireland stands on its own because of the religious politics, but Wales continuing as a Labour fiefdom, Scotland as an SNP fiefdom, and England being forever Tory?
I think England will be forever Tory. I don't think it'll be as Tory as it is at the moment. I think that was an aberration, given the completely one-sided campaign in the press against Jeremy Corbyn. I think I still feel sorry for that man. Some of the things that they'd done to that guy were horrific.
Well, I've always said it was the most successful smear campaign, certainly in my lifetime.
Yeah. But I think Wales is interesting, mate. Wales has kind of went a weird way. The Tories have got a decent level of support in Wales at the moment, which scunners me given what they've done to Wales in the 80s and 90s. I mean, they shut every single colliery. They ripped the heart out of that country. And that country still votes Conservative in large parts of the country. But Plaid seem to be getting a nice wee dunt in the polls. So next year's election.
Is that not the holiday home vote, Jimmy? Is that not Tories with second homes in Wales?
I do wonder, mate, but then 20% of the Welsh population is English now. 20%. I mean, it's about 5% up here, isn't it?
You look at the geography. North Wales, immediately across the border, you've got hold of Merseyside. That's what you've got as soon as you cross the border. A huge population of English. South Wales, as soon as you cross the border, you've got Bristol in that area. Huge population. And they're just across the border. That situation doesn't happen in the Scottish-English border.
Well, we used to go down to Wrexham every year to play in a sevens tournament. And there was more English voices than Welsh voices.
Well, they could be Welsh, because the North Welsh, the North Wales people have got accents that sound like Liverpool.
Oh, wasn't it Liverpool? It was rugby, I suppose. So it was upper middle class English. I would have called it.
Well, I mean, that's my experience.
You mean Edinburgh?
That was my experience being in Rill. I never heard anything typically Welsh there. They all spoke as, they looked Welsh in the sense that there was loads
How
of
do
Welsh.
you look Welsh, you bam?
They all,
I'm not answering that one.
they all had black hair and knitted eyebrows.
Yucky da, boyo.
I was once
Yeah.
chapping doors, selling something door to door up in a valley in South Wales, a place called My Stag, and there was 2 or 3 of us
Well, good rugby
knocking on
lad.
doors, and we're all dressed with long hair and hippies, and these 3 lackeys come up and said, "Are you guys punks?"
Punks.
Punks. Dear, dear. I hate to think what you were selling with long hair dressed as hippies, Stuart.
Is Wales not a factory for what do they call these ones that look like they've come out of a vampire movie? They call
Vampires?
them no.
I love Wales,
with a-
and I love
dress
Wales.
in black all the time.
No,
Goths.
I lived in
Goths,
Cardiff,
sorry.
fabulous place.
I only know Wales as a weekend rugby retreat. I've never spent any time there otherwise. And they're hard laddies on the rugby park. They definitely are hard boys like.
Aye, well, I ran about the Welsh hillsides for a couple of weeks as part of a training course many, many moons ago, and it's pretty hilly and pretty bloody cold at night.
So you trained to kill then, Jimmy?
Me? No. That was just a fortunate byproduct of what else I got up to, mate.
All right, okay. Well, on that note, there was something I did want to mention. See all this PPE stuff, etc., for care homes.
Mhm.
I'm not wrong in thinking that they've been handing out the email address and phone number for any individual who's not getting their equipment to phone for 2
Yeah.
weeks. Am I? They've had
Yeah,
that
that's
up
about
and
a fortnight
running
now, aye. Mhm.
for 2 weeks. So why do people phone newspapers to tell them they've not got kit?
Well, you know the answer.
Aye.
I was wanting one of
Politics.
you to give us it.
Oh, Jimmy,
Well,
well,
it is politics, but just before we go, it's actually been doing my dinger in for a while, and I've never got into mentioning it, but you're right. I've heard from a key worker who said to me, it's really become that new sort of coverall that they used to use during the election. That's not what we're hearing on the doorsteps. It means absolutely nothing, but it gives a journalist or a politician an excuse to say whatever they want and make it seem as if it's not coming from them, it's coming from the public.
Well, Nicola didn't quite do it, but I would have quite liked to hear her or Jean Freeman say, hold up a sheet of paper with the email address on it going, well, I'll tell you what, Hen, pass that on to her because it's been available for some time now.
Mm-hmm. Just before we go, Norrie, I noticed that certainly for interviews that I've seen this morning and for what Sturgeon was saying the day at lunchtime as well, it would appear that gowns are becoming the major problem other than masks for PPE. It looks like certainly NHS England is going to run out of gowns this weekend, which would prove to be disastrous
Well,
for Matt Hancock.
You know all this stuff about the 4 major companies in England supplying PPE, and they're now going to supply Scotland. They're going to supply Scotland with everything. 2,000 items, I think it was, except for 3 items.
Gowns, masks.
Well, nobody's actually, none of the journalists looking into it, not the Times or Rentoul or anybody, has come up and said what those 3 items are. But I bet you a pinch of shite, gowns are one of those 3 items.
Yeah. Well, it's been an ongoing thing. There was a boy at the press the other day saying, isn't it a shame that Scotland can't manufacture it? Look at how well the Germans are doing because they've got a manufacturing industry. Ken, what, buddy? Your newspaper supported the Tory party for the last 20 years that ripped manufacturing clean out of Scotland.
Aye. True. Mind you can't make gowns in steelworks.
Well, that's true, aye.
Or doing the pet.
They could have built a nice factory on that Ravencraig site to build plenty of PPE if they'd wanted to. They chose not to.
Well, there's a long history of textiles and weaving in Scotland.
There's a long history of weaving.
Textiles, yeah. Weaving is textiles.
Was there a big industry making?
And there is a university in campus in Galashiels called it used to be called the Scottish College of Textiles.
Well, I'm thinking, can you knit gowns?
No, really, mate.
Can
but
you make them
can
out of
cer-
tweed?
You can certainly make cotton.
Is jute
spin
any
it.
good?
What about
Oh,
flax?
come on, go over to Kirkcaldy, they make them with linoleum 20 years ago.
We should go for cannabis fibre, mate. Hemp.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Hemp. We could
Make
start a
everything out of
whole
hemp, mate. If we
make
make
a whole
everything out of
hemp
hemp, the
industry.
world would be a better place.
Bamboo. I've got bamboo socks.
Hemp rum, I like the sound of that. Now.
So we'll just get together, chip in a few quid, and start growing some hemp.
Hemp, yes.
Okay,
Tommy can sort of
guys.
see with the lights.
Thanks very much. That was quite good fun today.
It was fun today.
Incidentally, for all you people who are scratching your head, we're wearing bonnets so we can't scratch our heads. It's because it's Hat Friday, in case you thought we'd all gone mad.
And I'd like you to remember the great Scottish shock jock DJ called Scotty McClure, who always wore a bonnet.
Didn't have an R, it was Scotty McClue.
Okay, Scotty McClure.
Oh, you've heard them, Jimmy? I've never heard of them.
Oh, he was quite entertaining in his day, mate.
Well, I need to take your word for it. There you go. Well, thanks, Jimmy Hutton. Thanks, Stuart Lockhead. I'm Norrie Stewart. I will try and get Mr. McHardy to come on and give us an explanation of Culloden, if I can get a hold of him. Maybe do that as a standalone. Anyway, folks, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll be back, no doubt. I think we'll take tomorrow off, but we'll be back on Sunday for sure. Okay, cheers for now, folks.